Hey, what's going on, everybody? I have Chris Anderson back here again talking about a West Virginia player. He covers the Mountaineers for EerSports and the 24/7 Sports Network. What's going on, Chris?
Hey, not a whole lot. Staying busy this spring. Spring football is going on, baseball, basketball transfers, football transfers. Never a dull moment.
Yeah, and football year round, but like you said, the other sports, we're dealing with that here right in the middle of spring practices and everything going on. Top 10 baseball team. Akheem Mesidor, Miami Hurricanes' newest player. This one is interesting. I definitely want to get your perspective on him as a player. His 2 years there in Morgantown, but I want to get your perspective just on the West Virginia standpoint on this one. Seems interesting. Coach Neil Brown comes out. You can touch on that a little bit, but this one definitely seems there's just been a different reaction as opposed to most transfers. Can you kind of recap it and why is this one different? Why does this one feel different to Mountaineers Nation, essentially?
Well, when you have all these transfers, there's varying degrees, I guess, of why and surprise. And you have those guys that are like, oh, yeah, you're the third or fourth guy on the depth chart as a junior behind a freshman. Like, no shock that you're leaving. Or a guy that, sends out some ominous tweets or has seemed unhappy with his playing time, then yeah, not surprised to see that happen, or things like that. And you kind of see it coming. Every once in a while it gets a little more surprising. And I would say, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the most surprising, Mesidor is right up there to 10, like for West Virginia, because he was quite literally in team meetings, leading team meetings and meeting with his teammates, talking with the coaches on Tuesday night. And Thursday morning, Neil Brown was having an emergency press conference talking about him leaving the program. As you know, for this transfer portal, usually it is, is 48 hours after you tell the school is when they have to put you into the portal, or however it is that you appear in the portal after you give written submission to the school. So it was less than that he was in a team meeting and then the press conference. And as you noted, that press conference was it was very unique. In the past, Neil Brown is either completely disregarded, commenting. A lot of times people don't want to say, and usually players don't say it either, say anything negative about where they're leaving. Coaches don't want to say about negative things about guys leaving. And oftentimes Neil Brown will just not ignore it, but just, yep, he's gone. I'm going to talk about the guys that are here. And this time there was a media availability on that Thursday morning, and everybody in the media for West Virginia was in the team room, meeting with assistant coaches. And then all of a sudden, Neil Brown just kind of walks in unannounced. It was not his day to talk with the media. And he had a notepad, had some scripted comments, you could tell, and just came right out and said that Akheem Mesidor was transferring. And this was before Mesidor had announced it. This was before he was officially in the portal. It was several hours later when I got a message that he was actually in there. And then later that evening, Mesidor sent a social media, post about it. So this whole situation was different than any others, and pretty unique, and really kind of caught West Virginia fans, coaches, everybody inside the athletic department off guard.
Would you say a little controversial in a sense, just kind of the narrative around this situation? How would you kind of describe it? And look, Neil Brown's reaction, that's very uncommon essentially with a lot of coaches. Coaches deal with it. Like you said, most coaches just kind of move along. The coach, the guys that are here, that's typically what you see. And I found it to be interesting as well. Just kind of looking at it. How would you kind of summarize this from a controversy standpoint?
Well, things got worse that evening with Mesidor's social media post, where he mentioned something about feeling threatened and thinking it was dangerous, and then did an interview with 24/7 Sports. And we had the story up on our site where he talked about one of his teammates, St. McLeod, who was involved in an argument earlier this offseason and was eventually stabbed by somebody. Thankfully, he's just fine. He's going to miss some of the spring just trying to recoup. But that comment, one, it wasn't clear at the time when he put his social media post up that he was afraid because of that, because the social media post made it sound like he was receiving threats because he was transferring, but that didn't make sense because no one knew he was transferring. And so there was some confusion around that. Then he kind of cleared it up, said it was this. And then those comments caught everyone off guard because everyone knew why he was leaving after they were able to talk to him. And it was nothing related to safety, at least not what he had told. He had not given any indication of that. And so we got a comment from the athletic director on that. And again, kind of shocked everybody inside that athletic department that he went that route, that I don't feel safe in Morgantown after they had a discussion with him.
So a lot that he's gone through this process. Picks Miami. Let's talk about him as a player, and I think that's where a lot of this stems from. You talked about being a leader, but also a good player. He's frankly, either one of the best players on the team, it seems like, certainly a good player. Second team All Big 12 in 2020, honorable mention to the coaches this past season. Talk about his 2 seasons, maybe his biggest strengths as a player. What makes him good?
Well, I think his versatility is a big one. In high school, he was a guy that not only played defensive line. Well, actually, let's start from the beginning, because the very first time I ever saw him or heard of him, he was a linebacker. He was like 6'1", 210 pounds, and was a linebacker. Hit a little growth spurt, put on some weight. Next thing you know, he's 6'2" and 240 pounds. And West Virginia looked at him as an edge rusher type. He came in, played right away as a true freshman, and he would play 5 technique, 3 technique. He often, at times, they would run out this kind of, they didn't have a name for it really, because they only ran it towards the end of the year when they were running out of bodies at linebacker, where he actually lined up like a Mike linebacker at 6'2" and 200, and he's probably about 260 at that time as a true freshman. And he was versatile and athletic enough that he could do that and it not be a complete detriment to the team. So, and I think that speaks to his athletic ability. This past season, he put on some more weight, stayed more inside because out of necessity for West Virginia, and he was still good. A lot of 0 technique, a lot of 3 technique still, but he got hurt. Was that 4th or 5th week of the season, and you really saw his production drop off some there. And again, that was very clearly an injury that hampered him, because he started out very strong through the season, and I think. I'm interested to see where he ends up in Miami as far as where he lines up on the defensive line, because I believe that was part of the reason he elected to leave was, and he mentioned it in our interview as well, that Dante Stills returned, which meant Dante Stills would remain on that outside edge. And Mesidor kind of wants to be on that outside edge. And I think he's very capable of being on that edge, playing that 5 technique, maybe even 7 technique, and really trying to get after the quarterback. But he's capable of playing anywhere on the line.
Yeah, and just kind of doing some research on him, he certainly seemed to have a good attitude about moving inside, and felt like maybe it took him a little bit to understand it or to get to feel comfortable there, but certainly seemed excited about it at least at one point. So it is interesting in how he fits at Miami. Certainly, with Miami's defensive line, I think they want to move guys around, but I think certainly he'll have an opportunity out on the outside. And but yeah, like you said, where you touched on the different techniques. In your opinion, where is he at his best? Maybe even his weight, because like you said, you've seen him, kind of transform his body at West Virginia. Where do you think he's at his best? And like I said, maybe a playing weight. Anything in mind there, Chris?
I think that freshman year was his best. I think he is best as kind of that strong side defensive end, somebody that plays kind of the inside of the left shoulder of the tackle, and tries to get after the quarterback, because he did add that weight, moved inside, and he was good. But freshman year, granted, it was in a slightly fewer snaps, but he was lining up on those edges and doing different things. They would switch to a 4-man front, and he would line up in that, and he really excelled. He really looked great that freshman year. And then once he added about 20 pounds, played a lot more of that 0 technique, right straight up over the center, it just wasn't as explosive. And maybe it's not even that he wasn't as explosive. It's just the nature of that position where you're more of a eat up blockers kind of guy. And that's just maybe that's just not what he's meant for. And so I think an ideal Akheem Mesidor situation is, again, I got him officially listed at 6'2", 272 right now. So maybe 6'2", 260, 255, and playing more of that 5 technique kind of defensive end.
And just watching his highlights, again, not watching him in complete games and those kind of situations, but when he's finishing off plays, looks very explosive, finishing off tackles, doing different things like that. You touched on that freshman year, finished counting stats, 32 tackles, 6.5 for a loss, and 5 sacks. And you kind of see that explosion off the edge. And then, the next year still had 8 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks. So still a productive guy. And I think Miami needs that. They need a guy on the defensive line to make plays. And frankly, a guy like Akheem has certainly done that. I'm very curious. You touched on maybe his position, but upside, he's 2 years into college football. Where can he be kind of moving forward to year 3, at Miami, but just a year 3, a progression of a player, and also moving forward? What kind of player do you think this guy can be?
Well, I think he's an NFL type. Like, the assumption was in Morgantown that this was going to be his last year. They recruited like it. They planned, built the roster around it, that this was his third year out from high school, which would make him eligible for the NFL draft. And if he had another solid year, that would be it, that he would go off the NFL and enjoy a nice pro career. So I do believe he is someone very capable of, all conference type stats. I mean, he's already been a freshman All-American. Being a regular All-American that's really high praise, and maybe he can get there. I think that's possible. It's harder to do when you're switching schools like this last minute. So maybe if he's stuck for 2 years from now, he's All-American, but he's an NFL type guy. He could be in the NFL a year or 2 from now for sure.
And certainly, from a resume standpoint, his resume is better than any defensive player Miami has. And, just what he's already been able to do in terms of accolades in these first couple of years. Before I get you out of here, I want to touch base him as a recruit, guy from Canada there, from Ontario, from Ottawa there, and just curious what your thoughts on him. He was a 3-star recruit, plays at Clearwater Academy here in Florida. And, outside the top 500, national recruit by 24/7 Sports composite rankings. But what do you remember him as a recruit? You touched on his size a little bit, but essentially, how did he make himself into the player he is today?
Yeah, that body transformation, I think, is a big reason why he kind of flew under the radar for a while. But it became evident his senior year that he was legitimate, that he was a guy that was under recruited and underranked. And, he was for that Clearwater Academy team, somebody who literally would go on offense and play tight end and would be a guy that would score touchdowns for him, could do anything and everything for them. So I do remember just seeing that athleticism. I remember his high school coach sent me a video, it was at midnight or something after one of their games, because he had caught a pass as a tight end in the flat, made 2 guys miss, ran over another, and went in for a touchdown. And all I'm thinking is, wow, that's the defensive end that West Virginia's recruiting. And West Virginia knew it, and they recruited him like such. I don't know if you've heard this story, but it was Neil Brown, Jordan Leslie, who's a defensive line coach now, defensive coordinator for West Virginia, and then Jamil Adai, who helped recruit in that area. Obviously, Adai there at Miami. But they wanted him so badly that I believe it was January, or maybe it was right before one of the signing periods. And they went from wherever they were before that, because they were all out on the road, different places, but then met in Florida, in Clearwater, to see Mesidor, and then flew to Canada the same day to meet with his mom and his family up there, and just kind of hammered home the point that, you are a top target for us. You are that special. We believe in that you could be like that. So they went from Florida to Canada in the same day. And I remember Neil Brown saying, he was in shorts and enjoying himself in Florida. And then he was in a foot of snow by the time he got to Canada, because, it was December or January 1.
Yeah, that's crazy. Chris, your time is valuable. I appreciate you jumping on and providing a lot of insight and background into Mesidor's story here. And it'll be interesting to see how he how he continues his career. Thanks again, man, and take care.
Yep, no problem.